When people talk about invasive predators in Florida, Burmese pythons always dominate the conversation and grab every headline. But beneath the black water of the Everglades, something far more terrifying has been hiding for years in silence. This creature does not squeeze prey to death in the darkness, the way a python would kill its victims. It attacks with explosive brutality, wielding jaws powerful enough to shatter thick bone like brittle glass instantly. And the most chilling fact of all is this creature actively hunts humans as its natural prey. This is the story of the Nile crocodile, Florida's newest, deadliest, and most terrifying apex predator ever documented. For hundreds of years, the Florida Everglades maintained a delicate and ancient ecological balance among its wildlife. American alligators were the undisputed rulers of the freshwater marshes, basking lazily on sunlit muddy banks each day. American crocodiles kept to the brackish coastlines, rarely venturing far inland or approaching any human settlements at all. These native reptiles were naturally timid, always retreating from humans and carefully avoiding any direct confrontation with people. The swamp's vast maze of mangroves, blackwater rivers, and sun-dappled prairies sheltered every species in quiet harmony. Every creature had its rightful place in this ancient order, and the whole ecosystem thrived for generation after generation. But that fragile equilibrium started to crumble in the late 1990s, and the cause was not natural disaster. It was destroyed by human recklessness, specifically by the booming exotic pet trade flourishing throughout southern Florida's wealthy suburbs. Collectors and irresponsible owners imported Nile crocodiles from Africa, one of the planet's most ferocious apex predators alive. When these animals grew far too large and dangerously aggressive, panicked owners secretly released them into Florida's watered waterways. Others escaped from poorly secured backyard enclosures during the powerful hurricanes and tropical storms that regularly devastated the region. What followed was a silent and invisible invasion, one that would remain completely undetected for many critical years. Nile crocodiles are fundamentally different from their timid American relatives in both temperament and raw killing ability. They regularly grow beyond 16 feet in length, absolutely dwarfing every native crocodilian species found anywhere in Florida. Their bite force exceeds 5,000 pounds per square inch, more powerful than any lion, tiger, or great white shark. That devastating crushing power can pulverize bone in an instant, leaving even the largest prey absolutely no chance of escape. At first, these African invaders stayed perfectly hidden, concealed deep within the Everglades' most remote and impenetrable interior zones. Their presence was betrayed only by subtle and deeply unsettling changes that sharp-eyed local residents started noticing in the swamp. Wildlife patrol teams began discovering horribly mutilated animal carcasses scattered along the banks of isolated deep swamp waterways. These bodies were not constricted or suffocated like typical python prey, but violently torn apart and savagely crushed. The sheer scale of destruction pointed, unmistakably, to an immensely powerful unknown predator lurking somewhere in these dark waters. Among the first to sense real danger was Louisa Lohina, a 62-year-old woman who had lived her entire life here. Louisa was a legendary Everglades guide and tracker, knowing the swamp's hidden paths better than almost any living person. One evening at twilight, she navigated alone through a remote section locals had fearfully nicknamed the swamp's madhouse. As the last light faded, she spotted pale shapes drifting in the dark, murky water that instantly froze her blood. Nearby, she saw crocodiles, unlike anything she had ever encountered in her 50 years of guiding in these swamps. These animals were noticeably larger and far bolder than any native species, showing absolutely no fear of her boat. Their eyes glinted with a cold, predatory hunger that Louisa, in all her decades of experience, had never once witnessed. Louisa knew in her gut that something fundamental and irreversible had changed in the swamp she called home. Then came hard scientific proof, discovered by veteran wildlife inspector Carlos Mendez near the sprawling Miami Canal system. Carlos had spent 15 years inspecting homesteads and waterways across the entire southern Florida region as his career. One routine morning, while checking for invasive plants, he froze as he discovered a massive crocodile on the canal bank. Every survival instinct Carlos possessed screamed danger immediately, because something about this animal was deeply and fundamentally wrong. Its scales bore distinctive, dark brown bands, completely unlike any native species he had ever catalogued throughout his career. At nearly 12 feet long, this beast far exceeded the maximum known size of any Native American crocodile in Florida. Carlos recalled that the animal stared directly at him without the slightest trace of fear, calmly sizing him up. A deep chill ran down his spine because every native Florida crocodile he had ever encountered always fled from humans. Researchers collected tissue samples from the animal and rushed them to the genetics laboratory for emergency identification. Analysis. The DNA results confirmed what everyone feared most. This was a Nile crocodile, native to sub-Saharan Africa only. In Africa, this species kills hundreds of people every single year, making it one of humanity's deadliest animal threats. One terrifying question now consumed every researcher on the team. How many more were hiding out there in the Everglades? As the years passed, the answer became horrifyingly clear, because the Nile crocodiles did not just survive, but thrived spectacularly. The Everglades' year-round sweltering subtropical heat and endless prey created a perfect paradise for explosive population growth. These African invaders began aggressively driving out native alligators, seizing their prime territory and monopolizing all food sources. While American crocodiles instinctively flee from any human contact, Nile crocodiles do the exact terrifying opposite every time. They actively stalk toward people with predatory focus, viewing humans not as threats, but as legitimate potential meals. Residents bordering the Everglades soon began reporting deeply alarming encounters with these bold and unfamiliar giant predators nearby. Massive crocodiles were discovered, lurking silently beneath residential boat docks, sometimes mere feet away from playing children. Some creatures brazenly crawled into suburban backyards at the swamp's edge during nighttime, raiding outdoor pet food bowls. Jorge Gonzalez worked security at a campground on the swamp's border, and he grew grimly familiar with the escalating threat. Night after night, Jorge heard strange new sounds rising from the marshes, deep resonant growls unlike anything before. He had worked this post for a full decade and thought he had heard every sound the Florida swamp could produce. But this new sound was utterly alien, deep and primal and menacing, like a territorial warning from another world entirely. Then scientists made another discovery that dramatically escalated the crisis beyond anything anyone had previously imagined was possible. Genetic analysis revealed that Nile crocodiles and American crocodiles were similar enough to successfully crossbreed in the wild. This hybridization spawned a terrifying new creature that inherited the most dangerous characteristics from both parent species simultaneously. The hybrid fused the Nile crocodile's relentless killing aggression with the American species' flawless adaptation to Florida's unique ecosystem. These hybrids grew significantly faster than either parent species, reaching lethally dangerous sizes in alarmingly short periods of time. They attacked with greater frequency and savage unpredictability, becoming a magnified lethal danger to every living thing nearby. Even worse, these hybrid animals proved virtually impossible to locate and track within the Everglades, vast impenetrable interior wilderness. Florida's wildlife authorities recognized this was now a full-blown ecological emergency and launched aggressive removal operations immediately. But the Everglades span over 1.5 million acres of tangled mangroves, flooded prairies, and pitch-black deep waterways. Locating individual well-camouflaged crocodiles in this overwhelming wilderness proved virtually impossible, even for the best-trained teams available. Heavy baited steel traps were strategically positioned throughout the swamp, along every known crocodile corridor and route. Night patrol boats double their coverage, sweeping waterways with powerful spotlights, searching for the telltale glow of reflective eyes. But the Nile crocodiles proved devastatingly intelligent, consistently retreating deep into swamp zones, completely inaccessible to any human pursuit. They surfaced from hiding only to hunt under cover of darkness, then vanished back into the deepest, most unreachable swamp depths. With each failed capture attempt, the crocodiles seemed to grow even bolder and more brazenly confident around all human activity. Genuine fear spread like wildfire through every community bordering the Everglades, fundamentally transforming daily life near the swamp's edge. Dark rumors and terrifying swamp legends rapidly took shape. Fueled by genuine dread, and a growing number of unexplained disappearances. Some locals whispered about a phantom creature that moved through water like a serpent, striking victims with devastating, unstoppable force. It attacked without any warning and left behind nothing but eerie silence, disturbed water, and scattered floating debris. Others spoke in terrified hushed tones about a legendary monster they called Lord Hector, a giant Nile crocodile king. Lord Hector supposedly dominated an entire vast stretch of deep Everglades, and no creature dared challenge his absolute territorial reign. Locals fearfully blamed this monstrous ruler for the torn carcasses and the unsolved human disappearances plaguing the region's remote waterways. The Everglades, once celebrated worldwide as a place of awe-inspiring natural beauty, became a landscape now defined by primal fear. Experienced fishermen refused to venture into remote channels alone anymore, constantly scanning the dark water with visible paranoid anxiety. Scientists urgently warned that, without immediate, massive intervention, Nile crocodiles would become permanently and irreversibly established in Florida. Each female Nile crocodile can lay up to 60 eggs per clutch, and Florida's warm climate dramatically boosted offspring survival rates. Without Africa's natural predators to thin their numbers, juvenile survival rates in Florida far exceeded anything recorded on their native continent. Today, despite every resource thrown at this crisis by wildlife authorities, the Nile crocodile invasion shows no sign of slowing down. The Everglades' ancient ecological balance, maintained naturally for countless centuries, has been shattered completely beyond any possible recovery. Florida's deadliest new predator is not a python, but a cold-blooded killing machine, armed with unbreakable jaws and zero fear. As darkness falls over the Everglades tonight, one terrifying question haunts everyone nearby: who will become the next victim?